we haven't had to look for employees really since pre-pandemic, really since 2019 probably. And so, that's when we say company culture, is that you provide an atmosphere for them that they don't mind talking about problems because they know that you're not going to just criticize them.
Welcome back to All Things Wood Floor, brought to you by Wood Floor Business and sponsored today by the Frank Miller Lumber Company. Wood Floor Business is the home of the Wood Floor Brilliant, which would be you, our contributors and listeners. This episode today, I'm going to talk with Steve James, President and CEO of the Frank Miller Lumber Company out of Union City, Indiana. Frank Miller is a 120-year-old family-owned lumber company specializing in red and white oak lumber and most exclusively in quartersawn hardwoods. We're going to talk to Steve about his transition as CFO of General Motors up to becoming part of our beloved industry. He's going to discuss management, leadership, and the things that are crucial to any business operation. On the table today, we got business, finance, operations, production, human resources, trees, lumber, and all the other stuff that make us the best and brightest in the wood flooring world. I'm Steve Diggins. Welcome to All Things Wood Floor. Let's get to it. All right, Steve James, welcome to All Things Wood Floor.
Hey, I'm glad to be on your show with you.
How have you been, sir? How's the new year treating you?
Hey, it's been good. A little cold here the past couple of days, but kind of looking forward to some springtime here.
Speaking of which, where are you? You're in, it's Indiana.
Yep. So Union City, Indiana, right on the border, kind of midway down, probably about hour and a half from Indy.
Not the Ohio Union City. We talked about it. There's a St. Louis and a St. Louis, a Union City and a Union City. So nice they named it twice, right?
Yep. Well, we're on a smaller scale than St. Louis, right? So we have about 2,500 on the Indiana side and probably about 1,500 on the Ohio side. Yeah.
And now we were with the Frank Miller Lumber Company, and this is exciting because we've haven't done a lot with manufacturing. We did one polyurethane, and all the rest were hardwood flooring contractors, business people. So this is really good because we get a chance to talk to you from the manufacturing end of things. Can you just tell me a little bit about Frank Miller Lumber Company today?
Sure. So we've been in business for 120 years. We're on the fourth generation of owners. And we've been fortunate that they've kind of really allowed us to take the business, and they have the vision, but we kind of do the day-to-day operations. There's only 3 of them in the business still. So we're quartered and we do quartered and rift. We started back in probably the mid-'80s. The Japanese furniture company actually came here to the U.S. and was looking for people to do rift and quartered, and mainly just quartered back then, lumber for them for the Japanese market.
Okay.
And so we actually turned the mill. We were 100% dedicated there in the early years to the Japanese market, and then we've kind of diversified a little bit since then. And probably the Japanese market's probably only about 4 or 5% of our total today. Had a big fire down in 1992, and then we moved the mill down here, and we left. We call it. We have 2 separate locations right here, half a mile from each other. So the kilns and the boilers and whatnot are down. We call it Plant 1, and then the mill is here at Plant 2. The mill and our shipping warehouse is here. Now
you're you're married? Have what? 3? Is it 3 children?
Yep, I'm married. 3 kids.
Grandkids?
One grandkid. Yeah, he's 5. Just turned 5 here last August. So. He's a treat. So his kindergarten is his first year. So
you only got 1 more year to get him into hardwood flooring. So just put the ticker on. Get yourself set to go.
I'm sure that he would love it. He certainly likes coming up to Grandpa's house and whatnot. So
when did you and Laura get married?
1987, May 2nd.
85. See that? We're in the same graduating class, basically.
We're pretty close, aren't we?
When did you get to Union City? Because you were with GM. Was that 2000 what?
So I left GM at the end of 2011.
Okay.
I was actually at the Duramax diesel engine joint venture there in Moraine, and left there in 2011, came to Frank Miller early 2012.
And then was it 2015, checking my notes, that you became president and CEO?
Yeah, so I started on as the CFO in 2012. and then was promoted to the CEO and president in 15.
That's interesting. In a lumber company, to bring a finance and numbers guy into manufacturing, and they must have seen something in you in leadership, organizational skills. There's a lot more to do on the top than crunch numbers. You're talking production of raw materials. Is your background? Did you go to what? You're in Michigan?
Yep. So undergrad. So I got my bachelor's in business administration from U of M. And then I got a master's in manufacturing management from, it was GMI at the time, and then GM sold it and became Kettering University. And so that's kind of where it started. So at GM, basically, I always laugh. I had 22 different assignments in the 27 years that I was there. But all your executives, we never had more than a 3-year stint. And so I would bounce back from plants to headquarters. And I said, so the last one really there was, I was the CFO of the joint venture between GM and Isuzu.
That's okay. And that was what, 2012 into 15 into current day?
Yeah. So really, I came here. It was quite an interesting story because, like I said, I had just left GM and I ran into a recruiter there at the end of, earlier it was a Christmas party in 2011. And she kind of joked, she goes, I had this perfect job for you. You could have been the CFO at Frank Miller. And we both kind of chuckled. And I said, well, we'll never know, right? Because they've already filled the position. And then she called me about a month later and said, hey, the guy didn't take them up on the offer. Would you be interested in going there? And at the time, so our president then was talking about a rebrand of the company, trying to really kind of get back into some of the roots that we had here. And I thought it was intriguing. And what he wanted from me really was we had an ancient payroll system. We didn't have a very, very good benefits system. So all that stuff. So I was able to come in and kind of use my leverage that I had at GM to really change some of the processes that we had here. And like I said, then he left in 2015. And at the time, really, I tell the past chair or vice chair, I guess she's called, I'm like, she had I really didn't have any executive leadership other than the finance thing. And she took a chance on me. She's very faith-based, and she saw something in me. Again, at the time, I'm like, I'm not sure what's going on. But, when you look at it from my end of it, manufacturing is just manufacturing, whether you're producing an automobile, a widget, or lumber. Okay. And I think the process here varies a little bit just from the time it takes for you to buy the log until you actually produce saleable lumber. And so it's just the working capital is different this place versus any place else I've been. So I think I took the manufacturing process and really changed it here. Interestingly enough, I think, I wouldn't say everybody in the industry, but a lot of people that I talked to when I first came in here, they were under the same thing where back in the 70s and 80s, you just bought logs when they're available and you cut it up, and it was cheap. You weren't having all the alternative products that are out there today. You didn't have the stave mills and the bourbon industry. And so it was just easy, right? It was easy to make a good living just cutting as much production as you wanted to. Then obviously the staves came in, really jumped the price up, and especially the white oak logs, and that's what we're kind of known for here. And so it's a different process, right? It's much more, we're driven by the data analytics piece of it, and we've changed our ERP systems to kind of do that. So really, for me, it just took my manufacturing background, and I have some leadership skills. I'm a John Maxwell coach and whatnot, and I just took that piece of it and brought that over to the team here.
So I know, what's the head count guy do at GM?
It was funny. So that was I spent the first 2 years there, really just tracking headcount. I mean, think back in the day, GM was, at one time, they were the world's largest employer. And so I was actually part of the Chevy Pontiac Canada group. And I think we probably had almost 1 million employees between the three countries. And so I used to track headcount by plant, by department. And I said, and at that time we were going through our first downsizing release efforts. And so I was a headcount guy.
Yep.
Counting heads full time.
I saw it somewhere online or on your resume. I'm like, you were pretty I'm asking what a head count guy is. But two of the things we're going to follow up on a little later that I wanted to go back to in your profile were, one is the John Maxwell Leadership Coach Training and Speaker. Now, we're going to get into that a little in detail because I think it's going to be helpful for what we're talking about. But how did you get into, my company was a huge Maxwell. I have every book on the shelf. And out of spite alone, I read every single one of them. But years ago in school, you'd get a book and they'd say, make sure you turn it in and it better be pristine. And I never learned anything. When I got to college, I would buy the books and highlight the living crap out of them and make notes in them. I did that with my Maxwell books. And there's a lot of information. There's some really good success training there. What led you to doing the Maxwell programs?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like I said, when I was with GM, they did a lot of executive training, right? Leadership training. And so we had Maxwell and Blanchard and Zig Ziglar and Simon Sinek and all those guys. And so we went through pretty much an extensive training program through them, try to improve our leadership skills at GM. And so it was kind of funny. So when I came here to Frank Miller, same thing there. And what I found throughout my career is we have some really good managers. We don't have a very good leaders in most of the organizations, especially in manufacturing. And so when I got here, it was probably maybe when I just took over as a president. We had a little bit of a culture issue here. Again, obviously it's a really tough job. We were traditional manufacturing guys where we gave out, basically, you have a job to do, and if you're not here, and the kind of the telling them what to do kind of thing. And I said we have to be better leaders. I looked at the time and I told them, I says, look. I said, we can say whatever we want about this young generation, all right? They're lazy. They're always on their cell phones, whatever it is. I said, but if they are willing to fill out an application, come into our facilities, then it's on us if they leave. Because it's not on them. It's not because they're lazy. It's because of our culture. And so I really started to change that culture. So we kind of got rid of the manager stuff and we became leaders. And so the first book I taught my leadership group was the 5 Levels of Leadership.
That's the best one.
It is. Again, it's very simple.
You got that, you're doing fine.
Right. And so I took that, and then it was kind of interesting because my HR director at the time went to this SHRM program. She kind of went there for the monthly review, and they had this Maxwell guy come in and talk to them. And she's like, Steve, she goes, I can't believe this, but this guy's actually talking about all the same stuff that you're doing with us. Maybe we should get in. And we actually had a millwork company at the time, and we were struggling in the millwork business. But she says, maybe we can bring him in and we can teach these guys the 21 levels of leadership as well, which is, again, it's another great one of his books. And so I brought him in, and he's like, hey, Steve, did you realize that there's actually a program that we have all these, that Maxwell's training a lot of us to be these speakers, trainers, and coaches? And I'm like, never heard of it before. And so I got involved with it. He's like, man, you'd be a great, speaker. And so I did. So in 2019, I actually became certified. And in fact, I'll be with John here next week at his, he has a twice a year conference. And so I'll actually get to spend some time with him and his staff. And so that's kind of, it pulled everything full circle for me. I think he's still the best author on leadership. He makes it very simple. Like you said, there's tons of books out there on leadership. Most of them are pretty complex and they're selling something. John just tries to simplify everything. And so it's easy to teach for me. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
I know I lived for years in the self-help aisle. And I think when decades later I came across Maxwell, the idea was, wow, today, if you don't have the time and people don't even read 144 characters, he covers everybody and everything in this abridged version. It's all there. And you can kind of use it like a resource guide. You just go back over the stuff and back over it. There's something useful in all of that. Large corporations tend to do quality control groups and meetings and things. Some people don't get it. They don't like it. They don't grasp it. But the people that do, I believe, become leaders. And like you said, every company needs leadership, not just management.
And the cool thing with Maxwell, like you said, is that you can go back and reread it, and you'll pick up nuggets that you didn't have because you weren't ready for it the first time that you read it. And again, so I always try to, in his books, what's the three main nuggets I want to get out of that? And so I'll flip through them. Hey, here's the three nuggets I need to go practice, and then kind of reread it. And
So you're also on the RCU board, and what are you on the board of directors for the YMCA?
So, yeah, so actually I just left the RCU and the
YMCA. What is the
board.
RCU? I don't know what that is.
So the RCU, it's kind of interesting, and we're unique here in Indiana that they combined the economic development, tourism, and chambers into one organization. Oh. So I was actually, when I started with it, I guess I was in it for 10 years or so. So yeah, probably 2015, 2014, I started getting involved in that. And we were actually just in economic development. So I was on the economic development board. And then, again, we just had this visionary, again, talk about a great leader. And she started doing some research, and there was a few other ones that were out there that actually combined the three different groups into one. I mean, think about it, especially so our whole county is only 25,000 residents, all right? And so when you have that small of a county, it's pretty hard to have a separate chamber, a separate economic development, a separate tourism. And really, we changed it from trying to chase manufacturing in our economic development to say, hey, if we provide a quality of life, manufacturers will come. And so, yeah, so I was kind of on the initial set of getting all that set up. And I said I was the chairman of the board there for a few years. And I said, but I've relinquished that title. And then I was on the YMCA for 10 years as well, president there, just the local. Again, it's really important for me is that someplace for our youth to go. And that's really, if we talk about, that's kind of my passion right now is getting involved in the schools and really just understanding what some of the kids want, right? And we've been very fortunate here that at least the administrators, and we have 5 school corps in 25,000, which is too many, but whatever, it's all good. But they're starting to really combine some of the resources together. But there's, we've changed it where, at one time it was looked down upon to go out and get a skilled trade job, right? Is that, Johnny's got to go to college and Johnny's got to do this. And then we lack all these skilled tradespeople. And so we really try to have this change in the mindset there that college isn't meant for every kid. And so the 12 that want to just do hands-on jobs, it's okay. It's okay that they come and they have a spot where, again, like I said, we've changed the culture here, is they have a spot they fit in. It's really cool. So we had an intern here, I guess. So he graduated last year in our maintenance group, which is unheard of. You don't get a lot of kids that the company will let them in their maintenance group, and so we made sure that we were following all the stuff. But I got him in there, and I tell you what, it was really cool because most of our maintenance guys are in their 50s and 60s, kind of on the horizon of their career. But to watch this interaction with this young kid that had welding skills, and the guys were teaching them some of the mechanical stuff, some electrical stuff, and he was kind of showing them welding. And it was really cool. So we actually, he's at welding school right now, but he'll come back and he'll be part of our maintenance team here, hopefully for the next, 30, 40 years. So,
we've talked about it in other podcasts about the kids going to college and advanced education and this, that, the other thing, and how the trades suffer. But you know what? I am starting to see things lately when I talk to people. The end result, one of the good things is these guys coming up working with their hands are making about 20 times what I did.
Exactly.
And people who have the money are willing to pay it.
Well, that's the thing is that you get a 4-year degree and you're in debt $100,000, and all of a sudden you come out there and you're probably making 70, 80,000 or so if you got this degree. Our school systems are pretty cool here because within like 6 months to a year, they can actually have journeyman cards and whatnot, and these programs that they got for these kids. So it's really exciting for the kids, come out debt free, and I said making a really good salary starting off the block. Well,
I know I heard a radio broadcast somewhere a long time ago, and they were talking about income and working with your hands, et cetera. And his caller called in, he said, "I'm a plumber. I have a twin brother." He goes, he went to college, I went to tech school. He goes, my brother is a doctor now. He's employed. He makes great money. And he's so far into his college debt, he goes, I am a plumber. I already have my lake house. And he visits me and says, I'd like to have one of those myself one day. This is not a race, right? There's a lot of ways to do this. Yeah. I tell you, that when I was in school, my mother was really academic and spoke several languages. But my dad was a Marine street tough kid. I took every shop class for every writing class I took, and I'm so lucky I took those shop classes. I wouldn't have known how to do flooring, plumbing, electrical, whatever. They're great skills to have. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I've done all these podcasts, and I talk to people and they give me a nice little list. They say, "Who would you like to talk to?" And then we suggest this person, and they're all the best and brightest of the industry. And the weird thing is, when I ask them where they're from, they're always from Indiana, Illinois, Chicago, Wisconsin. Is that the heartland of flooring? Are you seeing this? I see so many people from Boston. They go, "Oh, I was born and raised in Indiana."
Yeah, you know, it's amazing. So we're part of all of the associations. And the biggest one attended is always the IHLA here in Indianapolis, right? So Indiana,
what is that?
Lumbermen's Association, just had our convention here a couple weeks ago, and there's like 1,100 people there. And so so when you look at that, I mean, you know, we at the Hardwood Manufacturers Association, you know, we got a couple hundred, maybe 200 or 300, and the even the NHLA doesn't get the crowds that we get there. So I do think that something about really the Midwest, and I said you don't have to be from Indiana to come to the convention, because I see a lot of people. Like I said, you know, Kentucky, Tennessee, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan. So it's just really that the camaraderie there, and I think, you know, for me, that's what I love about the lumber industry. It is that, you know, people just are really genuine, and they want to provide value to you, and give you advice.
Is that the LA part of it? It's a Lumbermen's Association, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I used to speak and train for the NRLA, which is the Northeast Retail Lumbermen's Association. Volunteer. I love it. They would let me teach the flooring class, and I'd have to give an exam, and they would grade me on how I did. But they collectively do that everywhere just to keep the lumber industry relevant. I know during COVID, I didn't miss a day's work. We were considered to be important to the structure.
You know, and I truly believe that was one. It's the culture that we built here, but two is that we didn't miss a day with the plant operating to COVID, because I mean I watched a lot of them that did, and they couldn't get the people back.
No,
our guys were happy to come to work. Like I said, it really kind of get out of it. I think that was really the only normal part of their life for that period, was coming to work, and we did the same thing. And so I agree with you. I think it was really important that we got associated with the, you know, whatever they called it, the valuable worker.
I know. I was just trying to think, what were we? There was a name for it. Like,
I know.
We were important. I don't remember. Yeah, there was a name for it. I'm trying to forget COVID. I think it helped me forget it, because you get COVID fog. But I would like to forget that even happened. One of the things I picked up from some of your podcasts, your writing, et cetera, and I think a lot, it might have started with your GM work, is what is a gain share program?
So it's interesting. It's I would say it's a variation of profit sharing. Okay. And so what it did is at GM, we would always look at what can we do, what can we offer, and obviously we had the unions there. What could we offer them to build in some efficiencies? Okay. And so so that was one of the things that when I interviewed here, as they had started a gain share program here, and like I said, so they asked me to evaluate it, which was kind of funny. I think that's really what happened, because me and my boss at the time didn't necessarily see the eye to eye on a lot of things, and that was one of them. He brought me in here to do this gain share program, and when I told him, I'm like, I don't think you fully understand what gain share is. Okay. Gain share says I have too many employees, right, and I need to reduce the amount of employees I have in my mill, for example, for us. And so then if you reduce the amount of employees, then the ones that were left would get some of the profits that you got from actually reducing and making it efficient. That's kind of the gist of gain share. But when I came here, I'm like, look, your VP of operations is on the green chain stacking lumber. I'm pretty sure that you don't have guys falling over themselves on a gain share program. I see when we look at it, you know, our material cost is probably over 60% of our total cost of the operation here. Okay. Which, you know, in manufacturing, that's a big deal, right? There's, as I say, we have two levers, right? We have selling price and we have log cost. And then I call it dials, right? We can fine tune the dial on our manufacturing costs that we have here, but it's really those two levers. And we really put a lot of emphasis on trying to get the data around that says we don't have a whole lot of extra costs here. Now, obviously, we can always get more efficient, but it's one or two heads. It's not, 50.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about Frank Miller Lumber just as a little bit more historically, and then I got a whole bunch of questions for you based on the operation. But what was there? I'm assuming there was a Frank Miller, or there is a Frank Miller, or there's a Miller family.
Yeah. So Frank Miller, actually, his dad started it, and then Frank took over shortly after his dad passed, and then Frank had his daughter and son that ran it, and then so Frank was kind of number one or number two, but it took over from his dad, and then Martha and Robert were third generation from Frank, and then their children run it now.
So are you regional, global? What's the scope of what you do?
Yeah, so we actually sell into 35 different countries, but we're still probably 20% export. So it's still mostly domestic, but we reach into, like I said, Japan. We try to stay out of China, but we still send some low grade into China, Vietnam, have some customers in Australia, some in Germany. So yeah, and we're starting a project there in Mexico. So yeah, so we're global, but like I said, most of it, we try to stay as much domestic as we can. We just like the lumber staying here and really providing jobs for us Americans still.
And these places, they're just buying logs, raw material. I'm assuming not flooring, or is it just the lumber?
No, so yeah, we just sell rough end lumber.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we have basically, we call it 4/4, right? So it's 1 inch, 1 1/4, 1.5, 2 inches. And then we'll sell that mainly through a distribution network, and then they'll pass it on. So the guys from their customers buy packs at a time. We do have some flooring customers that we send direct to. We do have some furniture manufacturers that we send direct to. Our retail store has some, they have a casket maker, and they have some millwork companies that buy less than truckload out of there. So, but yeah.
Is part of your job to kind of help? The big thing today when people talk about is their corporate culture. And I just did a seminar and people said, well, what's corporate culture? I said, how does your stomach feel on Sunday night when you got to go into the office? Even worse, how does it feel on Friday when you leave the office? Can you come in and say, are you excited about going to work? Are your employees, are the people you're leading, is your group? What is your focus on with Frank Miller Lumber on? Is that part of your job to develop a corporate culture and kind of keep it in place?
Yeah, that's really been I would say takes up most of my time, or took up most of my time before, is really, so what I consider that, like you said, is what keeps employee. I tell our managers all the time, like, our job is to figure out how to get the employee to come to work versus stay at home in bed.
Right.
That's our job. And what would entice them to come to work versus stay at home?
Sure.
And one of it really is how we treat them, right? We treat the employee that we provide. All the leadership team are really servants to them, right? We provide the tools for them to do their job, and we listen to them with an empathetic, not a sympathetic, but an empathetic ear. So I still go out on the floor daily, and so I'm always accessible to them if they have issues or whatnot. So I have that interaction with them. We actually bring in, whether it's a food truck or something, we'll bring in and we'll give them lunch once a month to do that. And it's the little things. As I tell everybody, I said, look, it's not about what our wages are, because our wages are competitive, but they're not that great for the amount of work that they have to do. But it's how they come in here. Like I said, our guys will tell you they like the little gift cards to McDonald's. They like the lunches and whatnot. I shouldn't say more than they get paid, but again, I can only give them an increase once a year.
Sure.
These little things I can do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and they really like that. And for the longest time, we were afraid to, I'll say, tell the truth, right? I said our folks knew that, right? They know when the log yard is empty, either it's wet or we don't have any cash.
Right.
They know when the inventory is through the roof on it. They know that sales are slow, and I said, and it's okay to tell them that. And so I'm very transparent with both the owners and the employees that says, hey, look, you know what? We are trying to do the best we can. We make the decisions based on what we know, but we know that we're not 100% perfect. And it's amazing what kind of response you get from the team and really from the guys out there. They are excited to see me, and that's just kind of, it says that we've created a brand here for that. We've been, we haven't had to look for employees really since pre-pandemic, really since 2019 probably. And so that's when we say company culture, is that you provide an atmosphere for them that they don't mind talking about problems, because they know that you're not going to just criticize them. And it's funny. So here, we've changed the terminology, because we don't have problems anymore. We have opportunities. And I said, we'll have challenges, but every challenge, if we look at it from a positive frame of mind, it no longer becomes a problem, because a problem is someone else's issue that they got to deal with. An opportunity says, hey, you know what? Yes, we did something broke, something did this, whatever. Johnny didn't come to work today. But it's like, if you look at that and say, okay, how can we make Johnny come to work, or how can we fix it, right? How can we fix it better than what it was before it broke? Right. And I think when you have that kind of mindset, it's pretty easy to get people to follow along.
Well, like they say, where there's crisis, there's crossroads. Some people just look at everything like that. Was John Lennon said, "There's no problems, only solutions." It's a better way. Listen, you can. I see this all the time. People are complaining. They're looking. I'm like, there's weeds in your garden. Don't say there's no weeds. There's no weeds. No weeds. They'll go away. Pick the suckers out and move on. People do this all the time, and I think that leadership and management, good ones, we live for that. It's that you can hear the buzz going, and they're teeing me up. They want me to be the home run hitter. That's what you're here for. I'm here to, this is my job. I can shine now. Let's go take care of the tough stuff. I think, is it difficult, like for you, I think everything comes down to leadership, and with your Maxwell training, it's got to be helpful. But is it easy to bring in an IT guy and give him the Maxwell hug, or is that a tricky thing to do? Those number cruncher guys are a little rough.
It's a great story, because my IT guy actually just got certified in John Maxwell last year. And I told him, I said, hey, you understand that you're going to go down to Orlando, and there's probably 3,000 of us that's going to be in this room and in this conference. And it's not just going to be one person that's going to hug you as you're going down. You're going to get like 100 hugs.
In the elevator.
And me from IT, and I know kind of how they are. And I'm like, are you okay with that? He goes, I'm preparing myself, but I think I'm good, right? And so I think, and that's the great thing with Maxwell. I think that they are so genuine in what they do that it's not a problem, right? It's not like trying to go up and hug a stranger, right? It's like they want to be your friend. They want to help you. And I think once you see that, you're like, okay, you know what? I can let myself get a hug once in a while. It's okay.
But it's not going to hurt you. But I think a lot of people, they look at situations like that, or groups or organizations that are trying to do good things, and everybody thinks, wow, that's a cult. Those people are weird. We're looking as leaders to find some answer for all of us that works for all of us, that makes work more pleasurable. Like you said, when you're trimming the building down to its leanest form, I like to say, I don't just need bodies, I need valued employees. And then once you've got them, and they know they want to get out of bed, they want to be there, they want to be there, make it great for them, as good as possible. And when there is a problem, bring the whole team in. Make it as I've seen management sit down and try to solve every problem themselves when they have the brightest people. They could get them all on a phone call and say, what do we got, people? Throw it at me. Take those great ideas. I think you're right, bringing them together, at least with something like Maxwell, or do you recommend a lot of books? I do that all the time. If I read a great book, I ask people to read it, or we'll share a little book report week.
Yeah, obviously the Maxwell works well because it's easy to train them. But there's a couple of other, really good ones. I think a game changer that we haven't got there yet, but is Patrick Lencioni's The Working Genius model there, because there's so many levels to the Working Genius that it tells what type of work that you like to do and why people get burnt out. What happens is they get burnt out because they're doing something that's not in their genius, that they don't like to do, right?
Sure.
And there's always things that you don't like to do, but there's things that you do better, and things that give you passion and energy that you're doing versus things that are not.
I think and we'll talk about it a little later, but you also recommended to me, I think one was Chasing Failure, and the other was, I think, Maxwell, is it Falling Forward? Again,
Yeah.
good. Listen, if you're in business, you can't have every tool in the shed. Go learn from these other people. Find out what makes them successful. It's amazing what you do adopt from these things.
Yeah, and that's the other great thing with Maxwell. He's always bringing in other people, right? I mean, we've got to meet Dave Ramsey and there's so many that Jeff Henderson. All those guys are just amazing folks that you get to listen to them as well. And Ryan Leake was one that he did the Chasing Failure. He was on Live to Lead that we host here last year, and so you're always getting all these guys come in. Even Tyler Perry came in, and it was a speaker with John one time, and Carly Fioroni. I mean, all those folks are part of his network, right? That he can bring them in and give that. And like you said, there's just as much knowledge you can get. I found that same thing is that there's a nugget or two from all of them, right, that you want to try and replicate as best you can. Well, still make it genuine and authentic, but there's lots of stuff out there that you have.
I think what you're saying is you're bringing that leadership approach. You got to be the band leader.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that, and I think we touched on this before, but it's that finding the right person and finding the seat on the bus. Like you said, I need some sales guys to sell. I need operations guys to go manufacture. But what's really, I think, and what we've changed it kind of to the next level here is we're looking what fits our culture, right? What if a guy has the right character and things that we're looking for? I don't know if I coined it or not, but I like the phrase. Sometimes we change the seat on the bus to fit the guy, right? We want him in the right seat, but sometimes, especially, and I think that's where manufacturing gets kind of in the weeds a bit, is because, well, we have this function, and you got to perform that function and do all this other stuff. And so we're looking at it, and I think that's what our philosophy was here before, is that I don't care who it is, that this guy just got to provide that function. And I always say, you know what, some of the guys that we have aren't the best technicians, right? But they are great for Frank Miller Lumber. And so we have to adjust what their strengths are. And that's a lot of what that working genius is. I have to adjust it to their strengths, because then I can pour a lot more out of it, and they feel more value added, right, from them, and they feel more appreciative, and they're adding something to the company. And I don't think that in manufacturing, we haven't really explored that dynamic yet. And that's what really we're trying to do here as well, to explore that dynamic, because I think it's really important that the old traditional manufacturing jobs we still need to get work done, right? You still need to pile boards, and you still need to do all that stuff. But how we do it is really on us. And like you said, it's when I get everybody together that says, hey, you know what? I know we've been doing this for the last 20 years, but have we ever thought about doing this? You're like, hey, that's a great idea. We should go test it, right? And I think that's what we're trying to do here as well, is what is it that we've been doing that it's causing us a pain for the last 20 years? They're like, does it have to be a pain? It doesn't really have to be. We've allowed it to be.
This episode is sponsored by Frank Miller Lumber. For more than 120 years, Frank Miller Lumber has been a family-run business continuously operating at its 20-acre founding location in rural Union City, Indiana. Frank Miller Lumber is among the world's largest quartersawn hardwood lumber producers, specializing in the manufacture of quartersawn hardwood lumber, with the bulk of its production in white oak and red oak. Other quartersawn hardwood species include cherry and hard maple. Being part of Frank Miller Lumber means being part of more than a century of proud history and a thriving and growing culture. Now let's get back to our talk with Frank Miller Lumber's Steve James.
When you're working with all these systems, especially in lumber, are there systems? Is it just pencil sharpening, or are we talking lean manufacturing? Explain lean manufacturing. That's got to be something that's more in your wheelhouse.
Sure. So for us here, and again, I'll just go back to the team. Like I said, we have a lot of great minds on the team, but for us, it's really about it's doing the margin analysis. Okay, so that's really what lean manufacturing is. It says, all right, what can I do to reduce my cost in manufacturing, either reduce my cost or increase my volume, right? I mean, that's kind of what lean is. And then the piece of how you get lean really is organizational tools. It's making sure that I'm not taking 15 steps to do step one and have to walk and the new step two. It's like, hey, let's make sure that we're in sequential order, that we're the most efficient in doing our job. But for us, really here, like I said, is that we just I guess it feels like it was just yesterday. I guess it's been a year and a half ago. We switched over to DMSI's Agility and ELIMS system here, which is a lumber system, and really the Agility is more on the sales side of it, and then really ELIMS is kind of your inventory. So we actually switched over that about a year and a half ago. And so the cool thing now for us is I can track, I say actual costs, and it's pretty close to accurate, but so I can track all the log costs in a specific bundle through the whole process. Before, we used to only be able to look at it green, and then it went into the kilns, and then we repackaged it, and we lost all the cost. So now we actually can keep the costs associated with that bundle. So when I go to sell it, I know what my exact margin is that I put into it. And I think that's really been a game changer for us. As I used to talk to my CFO, and it was kind of funny at the time. He's like, I'm not the guy to bring in a new system for you. If you want that, I'm not the guy. And so we went through several month ends and for the financials, and I'm like, hey, are you going to guess what the number is this month? Because we don't know. And the old system had 16 variables. We had standard cost, and you had no idea until you found out what your average selling price was, what went through the mill, and all that stuff. And so we had really 16 variables that we could never predict. And so now we basically have a few. We still have some ways to go in some of our analysis, but now you're looking at yield. All right, what's my yield coming through? And I can see it real time on if the yield's up or down. And I look and I do the root cause analysis on that says, hey, are my guys grading and scaling right? If they're off there, then obviously it's going to affect my yield. What are we doing through the mill here? Are we chopping up too much? Is it going through the trimmer and the edgers? So we can actually pinpoint some of those costs now and start looking at some of those variables. Same thing on the drying side as we look at shrinkage, right? So we know when the shrinkage is up, we've figured out something that's happened in the process, and we start going back and doing that deep dive. And so really for us, it's allowed to put numbers to everything that we're doing, and versus before it was just a process, right? I had a drying process, I had and so all of a sudden we've kind of looked at it. Everything now is about what that bundle costs versus the price that we're selling it for, and so it's much more accurate. Still, like I said, we still have some tweaks to it, but I mean, like I said, for us, it's been a game changer. In fact, go ahead.
No, I just asking. Yeah, because I think in lean manufacturing, a lot of people think it's just sharpening pencils, going in, cut costs, cut, and giving nothing back to the system. But right, you have to look at, well, we need certain tools and investment to make a profit here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even at GM, because I laughed at our lean manufacturing there because, again, theoretically it's always great until you actually start looking at the execution. And like you said, so lean manufacturing was to us is that we had a scorecard, that we filled out every week, and I better be green on it, or I'm going to get in trouble, and I don't want to be in trouble, so I'm gonna pencil whip it to be green.
To be green.
And so what I've told them here is that, look, the principle of lean manufacturing is great. I don't have to have it down where you're actually taking more time to fill out the paperwork than what you're actually achieving and the results that you're getting from being lean. And so we've kind of taken I'll call it a hybrid approach here, is that we're pretty lean, but it's not to the point where I have to document everything and make sure that we're all, our donut wheels and all that stuff from the lean manufacturing process that Toyota uses isn't applicable here, and it's not applicable in most places.
When they're choosing single-ply toilet paper and shutting every other light off, I know we got a problem.
And it was, I will tell you that's a funny story through my GM days, because at one time, so after I did the headcount thing, then I went into the budgets, and again, so I think I had 26 different plants I had the budget for. Well, we used to have them, they used to have to fill out 156 lines of budget, okay, for the manufacturing cost. And of those, whatever it was, 20 of them were, how much toilet paper did you use? How much paper did you use? How many, and I'm like, look, you're letting millions of dollars out the door for all the other stuff that you're doing, and we're focusing on paper and pencils and toilet paper. That's ridiculous.
Right. People are going to bring their own. Let me I'm going to give you like a three-parter here and I want to talk about the actual lumber portion of it. But when we're talking about what we have been, the Frank Miller team and your organizational skills at that, what is it like with your team? What are their primary goals, or what do you expect from them as a team each day, and how do you know it's working?
So for us, and again, we keep on refining this. So I have a scorecard that we review the scorecard every month, and so it's really what our organizational goals were. So it's your basically it's your sales, right? It's your cost per unit, it's your safety, throughput, stuff like that. But what we've done here recently, to kind of get to your point, is we've developed SMART goals, because I believe this is the new normal for at least for our portion of the lumber industry. You had the pre-COVID years where it wasn't bad. I mean, it was kind of good. Then you had the COVID years, and then you had the explosion after COVID, and now we have this new normal that we have to look at. What do we need to do to continue to be sustainable, not just for the next couple of years, but what is it that's going to take to get us 25 years to hopefully 50 years, and what process are we putting in place? And I think that's so for us, so we have the scorecard, so I still measure all the pertinent stuff, but everybody now has a SMART goal. Like, again, sales has to increase 2 customers in the Southwest region. Our marketing says, hey, we have to have a red oak campaign going here. We have to send out samples to that. Our HR team, what is it? For me, when we look at when we have to replace a job, and we certainly, for us, we still have, I think it's probably 2/3 of our salaried employees are over 50 years old. So at some point in time, there has to be a succession plan rolling out here. How can we get young talent in here? And I believe that you're starting to see people going off of Facebook and off that stuff, and they're having these reels. I said, you know what? We still have the billboards, but the billboards is only going to get a few people in here. I go to the schools, but they really are interested in what does the job look like. And so we're actually creating like employment videos for new hires and whatnot to see. They can kind of see the thing. So we're just producing a maintenance video here. So that's on her agenda there. It's on her agenda to look at the benefits that we're offering our folks. Finance, again, same thing. How can we lean up the organization? How can we use some technology in here through that stuff? So they all have their roles. And then really we try to meet weekly and talk about where we're at from our SMART goals. And then what does the vision look like going forward? We do SWOT analysis. So I'm very into what does it look like from a visionary standpoint.
And let's talk a bit about the actual products and what you do, because I think you guys are a little bit different when you're talking the lumber that you do. Is Frank Miller, is it all quartersawn? Everything's quartersawn?
Yeah, so we actually, I should say it's not all. Okay. Here at the mill, so we quartersawn everything. So we don't have any plain sawn at all.
Okay.
So we quartersawn, we produce the quartered and rift, and that's what we sell out of the mill here. I said we have a brokerage firm that actually buys lumber from other mills, pretty much down in Tennessee and whatnot. And then we have our retail store that brings in some exotics and some plywoods and whatnot. But everything we do in the mill is quartersawn. And like I said, we do 4/4, 5, 6, and 8 are pretty much our standard products. I think we're one of the few, other than the Amish, probably that do the thick stock in quartersawn.
I used to teach a class in quartering. Like we do a whole section on hardwood flooring, and I'd say, okay, today I'm going to explain quartersawn lumber to you, and why someone will say, well, I got Taylor lumber flooring is $8, but I can go to Lumber Liquidators. They have fully quartersawn for $1.89. Industry fall off accumulated quartersawn is different than the company that takes the log and the time to quarter the blank material so that it is milled into quartersawn material. Give me a little difference as to what you're doing there that's different. Why is there such a demand for rift and quartered, and why is it that rift is less available, if I got that right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Well, if you think about the quarter process, So we actually take the log, we cut it in half, and then we'll set half on the carriage, and then we'll take the other half and we'll quarter it. And so what happens is, I should have a thing in here, but anyway, so we cut. So the first cuts are basically a quarter, right? So you'll cut the perpendicular to the thing, so you get the ray flake in it, and then we flip it, and then we cut it again. And so by the time you get into the rift lumber, it's really the edges, right? And so it's smaller than quartered for the most part, and so that's why it's in more demand. So of all the lumber we cut, it's probably about 20 to 80 rift to quartered. And I said, and for whatever reason, and it's interesting because when we started quarter sawing for the Japanese, rift was looked at as a defect. Right? Really, rift's only become popular probably since I started here at Frank Miller in the last 10, 15 years. And again, it's amazing, but everybody wants that straight grained rift look in their flooring and some of their millwork and cabinetry and whatnot. So again, I think it's all, I think really we spent a lot of money early on educating the architects and the designers on why quarter sawn would be much more valuable than the plain sawn.
You bring up a good point. When people call a hardwood flooring distributor and I hear them get that call, I'll say, send them down to me. Are you an architect and looking for structural stability, vertical stability, or are you a designer that wants to see fleck and flake? I mean, I've done a floor where the homeowners come in and go, oh, why is that board? That's ugly. And me and my partner just picked it out as the greatest board on the floor, and we put it right in the middle of their dining room. Maybe it wasn't a good idea. But why is it? Why is that focus for your company? You said, we're going to just crank out quarter sawn. I think that's a good call, but why?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there's only, I think if we've done some studies, it's really hard to get data on a lot of it because there's a lot of Amish and whatnot that quarter sawn don't necessarily report, and obviously we don't report numbers and how much our volume is. But we're estimating that probably of all the hardwood lumber, probably only 2 to 3% is quartered and rift. Most of it is in the plain sawn. And if you think about it from a manufacturing standpoint, as we kind of alluded to a little bit, it's much easier to block up a log. And then at the end, I have a tie or a mat or whatever that I can just sell that as well, as where when we're done with the last piece of rift lumber, we're throwing the rest of it away. I shouldn't say throwing away. It actually goes into our chip pile, right? And we sell, I guess that's the other thing, is that we actually sell 100% of the log. So we have mulch and chips and dust as well. But yeah, so we actually chip that up and sell it to the paper companies. And we have some pellet mills that we send to, but yeah.
Do you do different species, or is it pretty much red oak and white oak?
Yeah, I mean, we've dabbled in walnut. And we do a little bit in hard maple.
Maple's hard to get. That's really a tough one to get.
Yeah. In fact, I think we got we're buying the last of the logs, and we'll cut it up here probably in the next couple of weeks. But again, it's not a lot of logs and not a lot of lumber. And then we used to do a lot of cherry, but I think we have cherry that we cut 5 years ago that we still is on the shelf here. Cherry's just not in the demand. You look at it, and obviously with your oaks. It really the flex sticks out much more so in your oaks than it does in most of the other products. I said we try to do walnut. There's really isn't a premium price that people want to pay for the walnut, because it's so dark you really can't see that grain pattern anyway. So
it's funny. I see these commercials where they say our bourbon with the caramel malt coloring, and you got it in a burnt white oak barrel. There's no way that your bourbon's coming out clear and white and pure. If it is, you're putting it in aluminum barrels. I have a gigantic Budweiser plant right up the street here. It's been here. They have the Clydesdales and everything. And I went in, and you know that they use aluminum kegs, not white oak kegs, but they throw big chips of beech wood in to make it taste like beech wood. So do you guys sell lumber for staves and for bourbon barrels and things like that too?
No, and see, that's what we're trying to lobby, because in the bourbon industry, especially in Kentucky there, is that they have to use a white oak charred barrel.
Charred, yep.
And it's only we have one use. Again, we're trying to say the same things, like, hey, you know what? It would be much easier for you guys and probably a lot less expensive than you just have these barrels that you can reuse, and we'll sell you the chips, all right? Because we got plenty of chips that we can make, and the bourbon still is brown.
Right.
But we can't get them to pass a law in Kentucky yet, And that's really unfortunate. Like I said, that really the stays in the bourbon industry has really driven up the price of your white oak logs, which makes it really difficult for us to compete against them. When obviously bourbon's selling a lot more than what our our ripped and quartered white oak lumber is.
Especially if you've got a name for yourself. You've said it before. There's two almost levers, as you call it. I call it volume and tone. There's two controlling factors. It's the cost of logs and what else?
The price.
The price of the average price of the lumber. Okay.
The average price of the lumber that's going out. Yeah.
Can you control production versus demand at all? Like you've seen it in these lumber mills. They call and they go, "We don't have any wood." The price goes up to $5.39. Then they go, "Could you buy 3 pallets or 3 truckloads of number 3 common?" Well, we don't sell that here. I know, but we need you to sell it because our building's full of it. Are these lumber players, especially the flooring players, can they control their production versus their demand at all? Or are they just winging it?
It's really for us. It's difficult because we're in the midst of those conversations right now. Is obviously the flooring is dried up, and again, when you're producing 20% rift at 80% quartered, and then half your quartered is your lower grade, and they're not buying it, and so for us, we have to make sure that we have the quantities of the rift that's required. At the same time, trying to slow our production enough where we're not swimming in your low grade lumber. So we, and as I mentioned earlier, we're much more in control of that now. Is what does it look like? How can we slow the mill down? How can we do all these things? But that's again for us, it's really tough because you don't want to be out of a specific grade or rifter versus quartered. At the same time, you can't be swimming in either. And I said that for that 2 years, 21 through 23, or really the first half of 23, we had no problem selling everything. And all of a sudden, it's kind of slowed back up. Where pre-COVID days is kind of, you never had the whole log selling at the same time, right? You always had soft spots in it. And so, like I said, we've really been after this, probably for 10 years at least. What does that look like? What is the ultimate, kind of lumber on hand versus what's in process. And again, like you said, it's really difficult because for us, by the time we buy a log, we probably have 4 to 6 weeks of log inventory that we have to use. Then we cut it, and then it has to go through we air dry it, then we pre-dry it, and then we put it through the kilns. And so that's a 6-month process. So try to predict the demand in this industry 6 months out has not been easy.
I want to talk to you a little bit about quality control because lumber mills are a little bit different. And I think I find that depending on where you are in the country, there's some places I don't know what it is. There's a quality control difference. I don't know who's working in those mills or if the deep south is different than the north. Like we say it here. Listen, we have Appalachian lumber coming out of mountain ranges where the trees take 50 years to grow, and they got some down in Apalachicola. It takes an hour and a half to grow a tree, and it's on a truck, and it's full of poison. There is a difference geographically
Absolutely.
in the quality of lumber, right? How do you guys, what you do, set the bar for the actual quality of the material? Because it's okay to have some stuff around that's not so great.
Yeah. I really, for us, it was because that we started off this whole process with the Japanese. Okay. And the Japanese are very articulate. I just remember they would come through and they were criticizing us that, you only had 98.5%, quality to hit our specs. Right. And we're like, yay, right? We're like, yay. And they're like, no, we need you to go back and explain to us what you're going to change in your process to get that 100%. And it used to drive us crazy here. But what it did, to your point there, is it drove our quality control to another level. And so when you look at it, even when Taylor was in business and a lot of other ones, when you put up our lumber versus some of our competitors, and they're better today, but still, when you take a look at the quality and what we do here, it's really top notch, best of the industry. Again, we have a quality control manager that actually will do spot checks through that, but we also have some quality controls on the line and whatnot. So I think it's critical, but I think it all grew back from our roots, and really that whole Japanese at 98.5 is not good enough.
Do you think it's cyclical? Like, what is it that there are complaints? We get them in flooring, and I don't care what we sell. People will say, I use that brand, it's the greatest. And someone will be the first person to get a hiccup and go, I'll never use that brand again. It's kind of cyclical, right? What triggers complaints in the lumber industry?
It's interesting. So for us, it's when the demand is high, you don't get any complaints about,
No. I'll take it all.
Like, just sell us as much as you can.
Yeah.
When it slows up, all of a sudden, that's not a selecting better, right? That's it's got a couple of knots in it, or it's got this, and we've been really fortunate, I would say, with our customers, and we've built a lot of relationships over the years with our customers. That there's a lot of give and take. What our policy is, if the customer's got a complaint, we're probably going to honor that. We're gonna make sure that they validate it and verify that, hey, there is an actual defect there or whatever. But we pretty much honor the discrepancies and have the conversations where, like you said, we're not just shipping it and say, sorry, 98.5 is good enough and you should just accept what we send you. But there is that dialogue, and like I said, and when they do have complaints, and I haven't seen one in quite some time. So they're handling it without me looking at that. But yeah, I think we did a really good job in talking about the complaints and try to make our process better.
Don't you feel that we're still in an industry where this is a natural resource, and you put it in their home in any form, and they expect it to perform like it was made of aluminum in a jig somewhere? I've had people, they go, what is this? It shouldn't look like this. I go, it's a tree. Hi, I'm Earth. Have we met? I was out there just a while ago, and we cut it down, and we killed it for you, and we replanted a few of them, and now it's in your home, and you want it to behave like a piece of aluminum. It's a tree. It has natural properties.
And that's the sad thing, and that's an educational piece, in my opinion, because, again, they can get a laminate or a vinyl, and, well, the vinyl doesn't do that. I'm like, that's why you buy vinyl. This is the whole process of why you would buy a hardwood, right? You buy it for the aesthetics. You buy it because it sequesters the carbon, and all the stuff that we don't talk about enough, and it also looks beautiful, right? So you have this natural growing tree that is now part of your house, and it's a beautiful piece of furniture, flooring, cabinetry, whatever it is. But somehow we've got into this age where everything has to be perfect. We just go to IKEA and we'll buy whatever. I'm like, that's good for 3 years. Okay. Again, ours can last 100. Just so we're all aware on the same page as
that's where the kiln drying process came from. Listen, if the floors are comfortable, you're comfortable. I've been on a claim once. I walked in the door. I almost got sick. It was so dry, so hot. The woman's lips were bleeding. She had a gallon of hand cream she kept rubbing on. Her cabinets were split. The walls were split. And I'd never seen anything this dry in my life. And it's, there's that comfort zone between 35 and 55%. If you're comfortable, your floors are comfortable, your building materials are comfortable. The pioneers knew to quarter things. They knew how to make things stable. Going to downtown Boston, net fit, 30,000 feet to a brick wall. It's all quartered. They knew what they were doing with the stuff. And then today...
it's the sustainability of that and the reliability, durability that's going to last forever. The Biltmore, we use that all the time, right? It's like, looks like they're brand new. All the flooring in there and the millwork looks like they just put it in yesterday. Is there anything that you can do? Because we get this in our industry up here in New England. One of the problems where I am, it started out as Stewart Clear. The market became a Stewart Clear market. No lumberyards, nothing. It just became, that's what got here. So the bar was raised. If you didn't have Fabulon finish and super clear flooring, you didn't get the job. It took 40 years to get Select and Better to be acceptable. So today, no one up here has heard of number 1, number 2, number 3. And when we opened Make in Georgia, we couldn't make any money because they wanted to buy millions of feet of number 3 at 99 cents. We're up here selling it for $4.89, and everybody has to have clear. What can you do with low-grade lumber? If I knew that answer to that question, I probably have my own company right now.
See, there you go. Right, the low-grade lumber company.
I think for us and we're just now exploring some other alternatives. is it possible to make a stave out of it? Is it possible to do some other stuff? Is it possible to look at some foreign markets that might be able to take some of that stuff? The problem that you all run into is that most of the stuff there, except for the staves, will pay you, but most everybody's not going to pay you, right? They're not going to pay you for that kind of lumber, and that's the issue that we run into, is that we can't get the cost back out of it if we're selling it into at least export markets initially. For us, is they want, and again, part of us is because we only have 2% of the market share. We're not out there promoting the corded and ripped piece of it. So most of the other countries don't understand that they need to pay a premium value for that, right? They're looking at, they look at quartered and they're like, oh, that's a defect. That's a defect. Then you're going to give me a discount for the quartered and not a premium. And that's what we've run into really in some, like, say, China, Vietnam, some of the other places over there. But, there are some stuff, I think, for us, we were actually talking about that today. If we could figure out how to take the saw and rotate the saw to cut more rift and get more of that versus some of your quartered common. But I don't think the laws of physics work yet for that. So you're just kind of left with it and hoping that somehow this Real American Hardwood Coalition promotion can work with some of the wood flooring and we get some of the wood flooring back that I think we've lost to the substitutes.
Where are you with pellets? It's funny. All our mills sell pellets, and then I try to see if I could buy a few truckloads for my neighborhood, and they're like, we don't let the stove people sell flooring. We're not going to let you buy pellets. That is something that is a solution in what you do, right? That waste goes into either the kilns or...
So we have a kind of a partner that takes all our pallet material, and again, we let him do all the work. We get paid for the pallet piece of it.
Gotcha. Before I go on to my rapid fire questions and let you escape, and we went over a lot about leadership, et cetera. So I think people, when they go back listen to this podcast for Wood Floor Businesses, to listen to some of that, because that defining your leadership role in business is really important. It's what makes groups and teams successful. When you have leaders and you bring in that compilation of minds together, you start to set goals, which is the key to all of it. And once you have your goal set up for you, whether it's lumber, hardwood flooring, install, sand, and finish, any part of our industry, looking for excellence and quality in what you do. It's catchy and it's entertaining.
It's interesting. I made the comment before. If you have that leadership, it doesn't matter what business you're in, right? Is that because same thing here? I'm 12 years into the lumber industry. There's still a whole lot that I have no idea on what happens in the lumber industry. But what I do know is that I bring people together, right? Build that team of like-minded people. And when I say like-minded, is that the curious mindset, right? Is that we're always thinking, we're always looking for opportunities, always looking for a better way, and not letting our egos get in the way. That's when I talk about that mindset. It doesn't matter. Like I said, I know that if I need a technical aspect, I'm going to my VP of operations. He understands that. If I have a sales question, I'm going to go to my VP of sales. So I think really it's important, and I think that's where we started to see that shift, is that it's just about leadership, right? Is that togetherness. And I made the statement before, I trust this team with my life. And I know when I say that, it sounds kind of dramatic. It's like, well, you're not out there. You're not in the military and there's all this other stuff. I said, but, I make decision. I'm part of a team that makes a decision that could be the life or death of this company. And so you have to trust the individuals wholeheartedly when they come together and say, hey, here's where we're going to go and here's the direction that we need to go. And I think that's, when you can have a team like that, that you've been successful.
That's a good point, because I started a business when I was really young. My dad owned a large corporation, and then I started my flooring company and then wholesale distribution. One of the things I found is at the level that you're at, people wear a lot of hats. That's cool in the beginning. Everybody's very proud. Somebody asked me in an interview, they go, it says here that you do consulting, this and that, but what is all this other stuff? I go, hey, when we started WoodPro, I'm the guy that took care of the claims, the legal, represented them in court. I also had better get the bark mulch under the stuff out front, go to the mailbox, take people, drop them off to pick up their kids or their car, whatever it takes. But I did find, as we got bigger and bigger and bigger, even with Horizon Forest products, that You have to switch gears. People can't be finagling around with wearing every hat that they're proud of now. Like, oh, we all drove a truck. No, people need to focus, like you're saying, understand who you are in this game and where are you in the chess match. You can't be the king, the queen, the pawn. You have to be something. And I found that my team was more successful when each person did exactly what they needed to do perfectly well.
Yeah, that's critical because we still want to do all the other things that we used to do, right?
Yeah, to show everybody I'm one of the guys.
And as I've told them, it's kind of funny because obviously, I have the accounting and finance background. Yep. Hardest thing for me to do is let my CFO go do what he does best. Right. And so it was a conscious effort that I'm like, you know what? Because I was dabbling, right? And I tell him, hey, I've been thinking about something. And he's like, I wish you'd stop thinking, okay? If it's one thing that you're thinking about systems or whatever, that's great. He said, but, I need you to be the CEO. I need to be the CFO and let the decisions run through me. And I think that's critical for all of us as we've stepped up. And I think, I said, all of us have this specialty that we love to do. Sure. And I said, the hardest thing for a leader is to not necessarily not be involved and still not to be a counselor and a mentor and all other stuff, but let them do the assignment.
Sure.
As a leader, that's the most difficult thing that they have to do is let go of I'll call it Maxwell puts it great. He said, you have to give up the good to get to great.
To great.
And it's hard, right? Is what does that mean? But it's like, hey, give up some of the stuff. If you really have aspirations to do something else, you got to give up some of that stuff. And as a leader, initially it's tough.
Yeah. How do you see the great when you're in it and not take a back step to being good?
Right. It was funny. I actually asked Maxwell that question last year when I was with him.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, John, I love this question. I said, but how do I know that I'm giving up the good, and how do I know what I'm going to go to is great? And he goes, Steve, you'll know when you know. And I'm
right.
like, okay, thank you for nothing, right?
You'll know when you know. Thanks, Coach. Yeah. I'll know when I take a back step in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And if you don't know, then it'll be a lesson that you learn, and you just move on.
All right, I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions. Let's see, just quick, short answers, whatever you can come up with. Are you ready, sir?
Ready.
All right, Steve James. Who plays you in a Lifetime movie special?
Who plays me in a Lifetime special? Probably Steve Martin.
Oh, that's my favorite. What would you do if you just right now, you had a 5-minute break? What do you do?
What do I do?
Yep, 5 minutes. You get 5 minutes.
5 minutes, I'm probably deciding what book I'm going to read next.
Okay. If you weren't in manufacturing, what do you think you would be doing?
It's funny. Actually, when I started out going to college, I was going to be a psychologist. So if I wasn't in manufacturing, I looked at that. We talked earlier. If it wouldn't have cost me so much to actually get my PhD in psychology, I probably would have went that route. But I look at this as that my leadership, really, I get to play psychologist and mentor and coach and all those different things and still get to do my regular job.
Psychology. Yeah. Boom. What's the best thing about your company, about the Frank Miller Lumber Company? What's the best thing about it?
It really is the people. Like I said, I've always looked at it as that. I think that's my biggest accomplishment here is how the people view me and how they interact with me. It's just the people.
What's something in your life that's probably made you the most proud?
The most proud, probably getting married to my wife and having me stay humble for 36 years now.
Good answer. You have a favorite pastime?
Favorite pastime, so I actually have a pond at my house. So fishing and golf would probably be 1, 2, and you can switch them on the day, right?
I love it. If I could stop at every pond that I knock a ball into and just throw a fishing line out there, I'd be good to go. Final question: do you have carpeting in your home?
I do not.
Good answer. Well, listen, we will talk again sometime. I really, really, really appreciate you being on the All Things Wood Floor podcast and helping us with wood floor business. They were very excited that you and I get a chance to talk because that's what you and I do.
Yes. Who would have believed it, right? Growing up, they were like, Steve would never talk, right? I would never be like this. And I was an introverted kind of math whiz when I was younger, and they're like, I tell them that, and they're like, I don't believe you. I'm like, I know. Again, you have to grow into your role, right?
It turned on you. That's exactly what happens. I used to talk. They'd have to tape my mouth shut. Now I just want to go hide somewhere. Listen, thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. We will talk again soon.
All right. Sounds good, Steve.
All right. Take care, buddy.
Right, yep. See ya.
Bye-bye.
This episode was sponsored by Frank Miller Lumber, a family-run business specializing in the manufacture of quartersawn hardwood lumber. You can find more information at frankmiller.com. Thanks for listening to today's episode of All Things Wood Floor. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review All Things Wood Floor.